From across the comic book community multiverse, the Comic-Con podcast begins now with your hosts, Justin, aka Nemesis Prime.
If you give them the title of influencer, then that's giving them more power, right? That's how it is. Like, I'm a nobody. Listen, I'm a nobody.
Zack, aka the Manimal.
We talked about it for a full, I believe, 7 to 8 minutes on an hour-long normal podcast for a show. And you would have thought we set their house on fire with the backlash. So,
welcome back, everybody, to the Comic-Con podcast, season 3, episode 36. Recording this a little early this week, September the 6th, because your boy Nemesis Prime going to Baltimore. So if you're heading to Baltimore and you listen to this early enough, I'll be there all weekend. And with me, I have, of course, my cohort, Mr. Milton the Manimal. How are you, sir?
what's going on? Just surviving the heat down here in Texas, enjoying it. I guess
yeah, we were all talking behind the scenes of how hot it is here on the East Coast, Southwest, Canada. Speaking of Canada, we have a guest here. We're tired of the things that go on in the newbie-verse because those guys over there. So we had to bring in, another sad puppy, I guess, from Canada. We're kind of adopting them. We have Hyper Combo Comics. I recently was on his YouTube channel on Sunday, so make sure you go check out that little live show unboxing. But good to have you on here, Hyper. How are you?
Not bad. Listen, I appreciate you guys inviting me. Sad puppy. Okay, like you guys are running like a Canadian shelter or something on the Comic-Con podcast.
You're a transplant.
Yeah, listen, I'm honored. I'm honored to be just one of many of my patriots in your little podcast sphere.
We're trying to pull you all away from newbie, because I feel like he's like, he's like the go-to person, I guess, in Canada, and I guess and that's not much to say. I mean, he doesn't really get a lot of views, but he's like the card guy, he's the comics guy, now he's like the video game guy. All of a sudden, I feel like he's just taking off of what he's seen on my Instagram, and he's just kind of, I want to do this now because I saw Nemesis Prime do it. So, but I appreciate you coming on here. We hooked up. We've chatted a lot, and like I said, I was on your show because you went and did some crazy haul, and you posted that you were listening to our podcast on the ride out there. So, of course, we're going to get into learning a little bit about Hyper. We have all different articles to talk about, and it's always good, when we're chatting with other people. But of course, let's kind of get into some community questions. Not too much going on this week, but we do have 2 quick ones. We had one from the Uncensored Nerd. They actually do have a podcast, and they said, do we do collabs? Of course we do collabs.
Yeah.
Hit us up. Always. You know where to find us. Instagram, the Comic-Con Podcast. You can shoot us an email at thecomicconpodcast@gmail.com, or Nemesis Prime or Milton the Manimal's Instagram. So right there, that's an easy question for you. And then, of course, we have a question from a longtime listener, an old guest, Mike the Beast Benson, up there in the Northeast. He goes, and this is actually really fun. I love when we actually get to have to think about these questions, right? So he's like, I got a fun one for you guys this week. You guys were talking crossovers. If you could form a team of 5, but only 1 character per comic book publisher, who would you choose? So for Mike's got, from Marvel, he took Blade. DC, he took Zatanna. Image, Spawn. Dark Horse is Hellboy. And Boom is Erica Slaughter. Now, it doesn't have to be just those 5, because I chose, I chose someone different for my 5th. But let's kind of go around the horn. Let's start with Manimal. So what would your 5 team be?
Okay, so Marvel, I'm going to pick an X-Men, and I think I'd pick, I mean, it got to, right? So I think I'm going to take Cyclops. I love Cyclops, so I'm bringing him across the universe. Right. DC, man. Who do I like DC, man? Who's my favorite? I'm a big
your favorite. It's going to be like someone that'd be good on a team that you'd want because of their powers or abilities.
Oh, well, I want all my favorites. I think that's just what I want.
Okay.
So.
I didn't go that route.
No, you know what? I'm going to bring Joker. I'm going to spice it up. I'm going to bring Joker over for DC. Image. I'm going to bring Kick-Ass from Image.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to switch out Dark Horse, and I'm going to go IDW. Okay. And I'm going to bring Raphael over from IDW because I'm not a big Dark Horse fan. It's not that I'm not a big fan. I just don't read a lot of Dark Horse.
Yeah, you could go whatever publisher you want. Believe me, I chose
Yeah.
IDW, so it's gonna be fun. And what else you got?
And then Boom. Oh man, there's so many good Boom. I'll probably stick away from the Slaughterverse, so to speak. You know what? I don't remember his name, but I'm gonna take the main guy from Once and Future.
I thought you were gonna say that.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring him over. Or the grandma. Psych. I'm gonna bring the grandma. I'm bringing the grandma over
Oh,
from
nice.
Once and Future. Yeah. So
All right.
that's my team.
Awesome. That's an interesting team for sure.
I have no idea what story that conglomeration of people would be a part of, but
No, they could be. It doesn't matter. They're there to help you and fight whatever galactic level crisis there is. Let's go to you, Hyper. What's your team? What do you got? 5 different publishers, 5 different characters.
All right, listen. Going with Marvel. Anyone that knows me, if I pick anyone else, people are gonna think it ain't me if I don't pick this character. It's gonna be Wolverine. People know that's my go-to guy in Marvel, so Wolverine would be it for Marvel. DC, I'm gonna pick Batman just because you kind of need like a master strategist in the team, so Batman would be for DC. Now he's in Dark Horse right now, but I know that he originally was in Avatar Press. I'm gonna go with the Goon. I kind of feel that there would be a good rapport between the Goon and Wolverine, just 2 street level guys. Yep. Yeah. Let's see. In terms of image, okay, so we have like 3 guys that are fairly street level. So I'm gonna go with Omni-Man for image because we kind of need someone that has a bit of an OP feel to them. So Omni-Man. And you know what? Listen, Justin, I'm a video game guy, so I gotta go with Udon, the Udon Publishing, and I'm gonna pick Akuma. So I gotta have a video game character in there.
Wow, okay.
Akuma. Yeah. I thought about that too, believe me. So that's good. I didn't think of thinking of image. I didn't think of Omni-Man, but
you could also do a Transformer now.
I see, like that's annoying because there's a lot of
right?
There's like a lot of publishers. I literally could just stick all 5 publishers and just do Transformers characters. But nice, yeah, that's some good picks, definitely, Hyper. For myself, and again, he didn't say superheroes, so I'm picking it very well. So for Marvel, I picked Darth Vader.
Okay.
For DC, I took Zatanna because, of course, I need a magic user on my team. For Image, I went the same route as Hyper. I took Adam Eve, so sticking with the Invincible stuff, and then I went IDW as well. I'm taking Sonic. So I need someone with speed, and I figured, since my magic user is taking on DC and Marvel as my Vader, I need a speed guy. So I'm taking Sonic the Hedgehog, and then for Boom, I got to stick with Erica. Definitely Erica Slaughter to round out all the monsters and bad guys. So
nice.
That's my team, and whatever happens, we'll go from there. So good choices, everyone, and let us know your team when we post this, obviously on Instagram. Let us know some 5 characters that you'd like to put together a team with different publishers. Like to see some odds and ends in there. So let's continue in the community. This is just something real quick, and this came over from Bleeding Cool. So the article says, did you hand in Mark Brooks' portfolio at Dragon Con? He says thanks. So this past weekend, which is crazy to think they have conventions during like Labor Day weekend here in the States, right? Yeah. But since 1987, they've been doing the Dragon Con, and it happened this past weekend during Labor Day weekend down in Atlanta, Georgia, at the 5 hotels at the Peachtree Center in downtown Atlanta. So of course it's a huge thing. I've never been. It's definitely something that's on my list of cons to check out. But basically, Mark Brooks, he posted on Twitter that he goes, "You don't know the true panic until you leave your portfolio full of original artwork in a downtown hotel elevator during Dragon Con and not realize it until the next morning," which was 16 hours later. Huge thanks to the stranger that found it and turned it into security. I'd like to help find that person that made my black portfolio in the West End Peachtree Plaza Hotel elevator Saturday evening around 5 p.m. during Dragon Con and turning it in so I can offer them a reward, leaving out a crucial detail so I can confirm them. Please share.
That's crazy.
Now from an artist's point of view, just, and we've heard this before, right? We've read articles before, not here on the podcast, but I'm sure you've read where artists go to conventions and someone steals their entire portfolio, or let's just say they left it in the taxi. You don't know, right? And it's crazy. And the thing, Mark Brooks is a huge name in the industry, right? So for him to lose tons of original art, it's pretty wild. For myself, I'm obviously, we're not artists or anything, but I've actually had a commission done and gave it to CGC. And then what I did was I had other books there that weren't being submitted at that time. And I left them just like right on their desk at a con, right? Like right at their booth. And like I walked away and I was just like, holy shit, like what like I didn't even think about it. Like I just like walked away, like I dropped off the one thing and I kept moving, right? Because I'm in a con, like I'm in con mode. But to think that like I'm just like one person and I'm like, oh, this is like a $200 book or like a $200 sketch. But like imagine losing like call it like 10K, 20K of original art. Like,
yeah.
Like, what do you do in that situation? Like, you can't sell it, right? Because it's like he knows what is what's there.
Oh, you mean like if you're the person who finds it?
Oh yeah, if you're the person that finds it and thinking you're gonna be sneaky and like try to sell it, like there's no point around that, right? Like there's nothing to do. So, Hyper, have you ever been put in this situation where like you found like something like that, or like that you left something and you're like, holy shit, I lost something at a con, like, and it was something in that realm of like OA or a commission?
Not so much a commission. I mean, at one point, like you know how it is in cons when you have like your little tote bag and then you have all your comics kind of like shifting back and forth. So I went to one of those panels. I can't remember which one. I set my bag down, and I guess it kind of shifted over, and two of those books kind of slid out. And lo and behold, yeah, they're gone. Whoever grabbed them didn't bother hitting it back to me. So. It's not a good ending to that story. So I mean, it's those kind of things that makes me a bit jaded about humanity in general. But yeah, in terms of me finding something like to that effect, I don't think I've actually came across that situation. But I mean, I would like to think that listen, if someone found something of value and you know who the owner is, that you would return it regardless of whether you're going to get a reward or not. Again, that's just me.
Yeah, I hear you. Zach, I mean, I don't know.
I can't think of anything that I lost where I was just like, holy hell. Actually, that's not true. Trying to think how I tell this story without outing myself a little bit here on personal information that I don't want out there. So I lost something that's extremely important for my work. And I couldn't find it. And then I found out that like my best friend, he had brought his son over to I think he was like helping me with my dog, if I remember correctly, letting my dog out or something. Anyway, he brought his son over. His son was really young, 3, 4, something like that. And he saw this item and he took it. He took it home. He just took it home with him. And I lost this item and I was like, oh crap, like this is a big deal. Like I'm gonna have to figure out how to explain this. And luckily my friend and his wife, or one of the two of them, were going through the toy box of their son and found my item there. And it was a nice moment. So it's not anything quite like this Mark Brooks situation, but I think it's pretty awesome that the person gave it back. I'm guessing like if I were to take a guess as to like who found it, if they didn't look for like any kind of reward, or like, look, if it's me, then I'm not saying I'd be looking for a reward, but if I found Mark Brooks's OA book, like I'd be looking for Mark Brooks to hand it to him himself. Because I'll be honest with you, I'd take the opportunity to meet Mark Brooks and to be like, oh yeah, hey dude, here's your stuff back. What's up?
Hey, you want to come on the podcast?
Yeah, exactly, dude. Like, I mean, you can be a good Samaritan and still kind of, look for a little something as well. But I'm guessing it's probably just in my mind, as you told the story, I have a mental image of this little old lady who just happened to be in the hotel as well. And she found this book of cute art pictures and she took it to the front desk and turned it into the lobby. But regardless of who it was and how it happened, I mean, that's what you got to do. And, I agree with you, Justin. It'd probably be hard to get away with selling that, but you can do it. You can find a way to profit off that and sell that book. And that would be a pretty horrible thing to do. So I think it's a great story. I hope Mark Brooks connects with this person and, whether he gives them something or something, at least like if it's me, I want an in-person, like tell them thank you. That's what I would want if I'm Mark Brooks and someone found my item, so it's crazy. It's a wild story.
Yeah. So at least there's like good people still out there in the community that, want to bring it back to people. Cause again, I've read stories over the years, either on Instagram or on websites where people have lost stuff. And
I think I'd probably be like, hey, how about Can I get one of those X-Men OAs though as like a reward? like some of that House of X Powers of 10 OA. Can I grab one of them? We're good here, dude. Or here's your book, dude. Someone took that X-Men one. That's weird.
Yeah.
That one's missing.
Of course it would be. And then all of a sudden it'd be framed behind you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be getting sold by any means. Like, oh, that's weird. Someone took that. I don't know.
Yeah, too bad. I mean, if he had, obviously this is far gone, but if he had like the covers that he did for like Kanan, I'd be like, I don't know, that Kanan one cover. It's like all of them were gone. And it was like just some Star Wars guy took it.
You're like, no. I just printed that out. I printed a cover out and I framed it because I liked it so much.
Too good. All right, so a good Samaritan and a good question for our community stuff. So let's kind of move on. Again, we have a community member here. If you don't know Hyper Combo Comics, you can of course find him on Instagram, same name, and also a YouTube channel. Hyper, like, tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously you're Canadian, so like you said earlier, we're bringing on our normal Canadian friends. But what are you into as far as collecting, and like what got you into collecting?
So I mean, I think I've 2023. Yeah, I've been in the hobby for about 5 years at this point. Like back in the hobby, sorry. Like I've been collecting sporadically here and there throughout my life, but I would say I went full bore in 2018. Honestly, it kind of spawned. The whole thing spawned from. It was a situation where basically it was the year like my dad passed away, and then it was a case where basically I needed something to kind of get my mind off things. So I think I just basically there was like a sale going on in a local comic shop. And then I kind of just, walked in just to see what's up. And then I picked up, I actually remember what I picked up. It was like the Ta-Nehisi Coates Black Panther series, like the first 12 issues. And then ever since then, I kind of basically been falling down a rabbit hole where I've just been collecting different issues, kind of experimenting with different publishers. And at the time, I wasn't so much into the spec side or the investment side. I was just more of a reader. And then I only started getting into know about values of books and all that maybe like a few months in. And now it's just more of a case where like I'm basically just collecting, just like Justin, you know me. Like right now I'm collecting more in terms of finding hard to find gems. That's kind of where my head's at right now. Because when I got into the hobby, one of my goals, I guess my white whales, was getting that Hulk 181. And it was one of those things where I figured it was going to be unattainable because keep in mind, the thought of spending 3 figures on a book, let alone 4 figures, was a bit daunting. And I thought, okay, listen, it's never going to happen. And then 2 years ago, I kind of wrapped my head around the idea, listen, it's a book that I'm going to be keeping in my PC. I'm never going to part with it. So I actually came to terms with, look, I'm actually going to get a Hulk 181. I did achieve it. And, the question always is, like, what happens once you get your grill? Like, because I always wonder that, like, okay, like, once I hit that quote unquote pinnacle of my comic journey, where do I go from there? So then for me, I guess, like, everyone has their way of kind of keeping the spice in the hobby. For me, it's now looking for those hard to find variants, hard to find books and all that. And occasionally, I'll still scoop up like the key comic here and there. But honestly, for me, I've always been a hunter. Speculation, I dabbled in speculation, and I realized that wasn't my lane. We're all good at, like, I know newbies pretty good at the speculation game. That's not my bag. My forte has really been finding those hidden gems, and I always post those on IG. And I think that's kind of what keeps me motivated to be in the hobby. And of course, I'm always going to be a reader as well. So that part never left. But in terms of the collectability side of things, it's just finding those hard to find books. And it's kind of self-satisfying because it's books that sometimes people think are out of reach, and then you end up finding in your LCS. It's a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, I think honestly, in this hobby, there's so many like phases of this hobby, right? And I feel like you have to come in, if you're gonna last in this hobby, you got to come in as a reader or an enjoyer of art. Like, so I'll go both ways, you know what I mean? Whether you like the stories and you like to read, or if you just really enjoy art and comic book art, you have to come in originally with that. That's got to be the thing that really keeps you in, or else it's a fad, you know what I mean? It just kind of goes away. But you'll find, dude, as you go on, like, and I'm with you, I get what you mean, because I've hit that goal too, where it was like, I got to get an X-Men 1. And I saved up, I sold my shit, and I got one. And then I was like, well, now, damn, what next? You know? And so in my head, it's like, well, now I want a Hulk 1 or a Fantastic Four 1. But am I really actively going towards it? Not so much. But you also do kind of get in these little phases where it's like, maybe I'll dabble in the spec game a little bit. Or right now, and I'm kind of late to the game with this, but I like them, is I'm not hunting, but I'm kind of picking up those John Tyler Christopher negatives. I really enjoy those a lot. And here in a couple of years, I might not really like them anymore. I might be like, whatever. But, and Justin knows too, it comes in fads, right? Like, Justin, what are some of the fads you've had where you were really into them and now you're kind of like, I'm good on that one?
I mean, variance is such a big thing. Like, I was always into back in the day. Like, I mean, I still into variance, but I'm like hyper. Like, I look for the gems, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't actively go out every week and buy like the 1 in 25s, the 1 in 50s, because now it's like it's so saturated,
right,
with so many store exclusives that like back in like 2007, 2010, whatever, like stores weren't doing exclusives. So the only way to find those variants was like in a store that ordered enough copies to get this book, or like someone selling a collection and then they just have that book on hand for some reason. Like now it's just like their variants are like a dime a dozen, to be honest. I always were, I dabbled in trying to get like all issues of like a certain character. Like anytime like Jason Todd popped up in a comic, like I had they no longer had this website. It was called comicbookdatabase.com. So it's comic book DB.
Yeah.
And it was cool. Like you would literally just type in a character and they would literally tell you a little bit about the character and every issue that this character appeared in. So like obviously every Batman book, every Detective Comics, he would randomly show up in one issue of like Action Comics. So I'd go and buy that. And then like randomly he'd show up in like, I don't know, like Wonder Woman just for one issue. So like I was hunting down all those, but then you get to the point where you're like, I can't get everything. Cause then it's just like a mishmash because I'm not really reading it. And it's like, why am I really just getting it for just the character? So and people know, I trimmed down my collection over the summer. I sold off a good portion of my collection to, pay for house stuff. And, I'm like hyper, it's just kind of, you got to pick and choose your battles. Like, I don't think I'll ever obtain my grail. My Batman 1 is like my grail, but I obviously slowly am working on getting as close to it as possible with my Batman Volume 1 run. I'm down to about 80 issues from 1 to like 90 something. I have a few of them in between some of the keys, the first appearances, but like, it's fun. That's more of the hunt. And like, I like, Hyper and I are similar. Like we like going on hunts. Like I know you're in a part where there's not too many shops. So
the hunt's never been my thing either, but it is fun. It's fun, but I don't live for the hunt.
I kind of have a bit of an unfair advantage with this whole hunt situation, and people resent me for it sometimes because I literally work about a 15-minute walk from one of the LCSs that I frequent. So literally during my lunch break, I just walk to my LCS, and I basically it's almost like I have home field advantage at that point. So I kind of and it's actually one of the biggest shops in our city, so they tend to put a lot of new stuffs in their new issues and in their key issue section and variants. So I tend to usually get first dibs unless someone ends up coming during opening hours or something. So it's I'm gonna ride this out until I find a new job or something. But until I'm at this current location, I'm just gonna milk this cow dry, basically.
Until there's nothing left for you to even hunt for there, right?
You know what? I always thought that like at a certain point, it's like almost like, will I ever get to that point where like like everyone's always like, what is your end goal in this hobby? Like I don't really know, to be honest. I'm not really sure what my end goal is. Like I'm just collecting right now for the sake of, as long as I'm still having fun in the hobby, because there was a point where I would say during the COVID period, I took some bad advice. I'm not going to say from who. I took some bad advice and I started dumping money in certain exclusives, and I paid for it. Listen, I'm gonna own up to it. I made the mistake. I actually keep some of those books as a reminder, almost like collect according to your own intuition. Like I sometimes was listening too much into what other people are saying and not really listening to my gut, and I burned a lot of cash unnecessarily.
So you bought all the Virus and Codex books.
I was actually, it was actually during that Virus and the whole
Wait, was that it though? Was it Virus?
It was the Virus, and it was the Thor God of Thor.
Black Winter, huh?
Black Winter.
You're a Black Winter guy.
It was during that period.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, at that point I was just 2 years into the hobby, so I felt like I was still fairly green. And it's like a lot of it's a lot of magic beans that were being sold. Like, this character is gonna blow up, and I'm still waiting for Donnie's Twitter account, Twitter post about Black Winter being a big thing to still come to fruition. I'm still waiting.
Yeah, that was a tough time, man, with COVID, and everything was hitting, and everyone was trying to be on top of everything, and like the next one, and there was a lot. So, I mean, a lot of people were playing that game, the Virus and the Black Winter, and everything from that Thor run, which nothing played out except Black Winter. God, when did I read? Black Winter came up recently. Justin, we were talking about it. Yeah, the villains, right? And I was like, "You're joking me, right? Like, it's not happening." But
it's crazy to think, like, we there's so many YouTube channels out there where we're literally like we're a small fish in a huge pond, ocean, whatever you want to call it. Like, to think about back in the day, like when we first started collecting, and I get hyper, and we've had people on here that are like newer collectors, but like Zach and I, we've been like longtime collectors. I've been collecting comics and reading comics since the late 80s, early 90s. And like, to think back then that like there wasn't really no thing as like speculation. There really wasn't like I'm buying this for an investment. Like, yeah, I know there are people who were like, oh, I'm buying the X-Men 1 or like the Death of Superman. But I was such a kid at that time that like I was just buying everything to read. Like, I had no agenda. And then like I stopped collecting. And then when I finally got back into it, and like, the mid 2000s, I still was always collecting Transformers books. But then like when the relaunch came with like DC's New 52, I looked at like all my old books. I'm like, wow, I have way too much and don't know what to do with all this stuff now.
Yeah, it was really just like back then it was like number ones and first appearances. I mean, that was what you were like, if you were hunting for anything, or if you were like, hey, I want to get that first appearance, or that number one, that was it. I remember $20 for X Factor number one, seeing my LCS name, like, I'll never get that book. Like, oh no.
I think like giant size X-Men was like 100, 200 bucks at most.
Yeah,
I'm
right?
just like,
it's so unattainable. But I remember looking back at like some of those early X-Men books. I remember sitting in my garage. I can think of this with my buddy who lived down the street. We used to ride his bike over to the garage. We'd be looking at comics on like a fold-out table. And he had a bunch of like older X-Men books. And I couldn't tell you what issue or what number it is, but I'm sure you guys can all like imagine it in your head. It's like a Christmas themed one, and it's got like the Brood. I think Shadowcat's at the bottom. The Brood's got like the like
I
the
think
Santa
it's Byrne's
hat on.
last issue.
I'm sorry?
I think it's John Byrne's last issue on
yeah. And I remember thinking, wow, that's so old, bro. How do you have that? Like, oh, that's so fantastic. Like, that's just wild, dude. And there was no variants, dude. There was no variants back then. Like, there was that cover, and then like what, direct market maybe in the 90s.
When nobody cared, like nobody knew. Yeah. And then like obviously even at that time there was like the Pence variants and UK variants and Canadian variants. Nobody fucking gave a shit. Like, we didn't know. We were just buying comics to buy comics. Like we wanted to read. Like, obviously older people that were in the hobby and going to shows, that's like a completely different story. But so Hyper, you've only been in it for a couple of years. You said about 5 years. Obviously we're not, we're going to touch on later on with what are we currently reading, but like, what are your favorite characters? Like, what's something that you gravitate toward? Obviously, I know you got the Street Fighter poster in the background, and I got a shout out to Newbie Comics and Black Crown, because last night, I don't know if you saw them last night, they were talking about video games, and Newbie's like, they're like, oh, we're massive gamers, and he's like, the guy who's like Ryu and Ken, but he's got the big bowl around his neck, and like he couldn't even name Akuma.
No, the big puka necklaces.
He couldn't even. I was like, this guy's a gamer. He doesn't know who Akuma is. I'm just like, whatever. So anyway, back to you, Hyper. What are some of your characters that you like collecting?
Well, on that sad note, listen, I'm very much in because I do listen regularly to your podcast, and I feel like some of my characters are very much in line with what Zach actually reads. I do like me some TMNT. I actually pretty much collect almost. I know like IDW has like what 50 variations of TMNT series. I think I pretty much collect all of them. The TMNT Stranger Things, TMNT Street Fighter. Not always the greatest reading material, if I'm being honest, but I do like the IDW run. I do like the mainstream IDW run and The Last Ronin. So TMNT is definitely one of my gems, and I think that just comes from nostalgia, and just basically the nostalgia is what kind of intrigued me about how the comic series are. So, and I know Zach, you mentioned how people get the misconception that TMNT is going to be like that kiddie kind of series, and far from it. It's actually pretty. It's a very mature. Not I don't want to say mature to like image level mature, but it definitely has some heavy content in that series. So TMNT is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
X-Men is always been my team. We were actually talking about goals. One of my, I guess, low-key goals is I am trying to finish the Claremont, the whole Claremont X-Men run. I think I'm about less than 30 issues in from completing it.
Nice.
So definitely like the X-Men stuff. I did kind of dabble in the whole Hickman era, but it was getting to the point that there was just too many titles. And for me, it's like, when there's so many choices being saturated, I sometimes just throw my hands and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a pause from this and I'll just go and read like the older stuff. Like from Scott Lobdell, Chris Claremont, those guys. And then of course, Batman. Batman's been always one of my favorites. And listen, I don't know if this is a controversial statement, but I always maintain that after reading both stories, I feel that Court of Owls is actually better than Dark Knight Returns. That's just my opinion. I know a lot of people when they talk about top Batman stories, they always put Dark Knight Returns as the top. For me, Court of Owls tops it. So,
I never really compared the two. I always feel like those like stories like the an alternate universe type, like an Elseworld type story like Dark Knight Returns, they don't really hold weight to me as like a classic. Like if you were to say what's the best Batman storyline, I'm like, well, to me it's canon. If it's not canon, it's just a fun variation story. Like I would even say like Age of Apocalypse as an X-Men storyline is amazing, but is it the best X-Men storyline? No, because it's not necessarily canon, so to speak. Court of Owls was just something newer, right? That hadn't been done. Like you hadn't had a new Batman villain in how long? That was like awesome. It was just all the old ones, really.
Yeah, and it was a good start off point for New 52. Like to get into the reading, it wasn't an old villain that they were just trying to revamp. Like everything, obviously, New 52 was like brand new to everybody. So the idea of having, not a brand new writer, because obviously, yes, he did some Detective Comics before that, but yeah, I think it was perfect. I think it was one of the best runs.
And it had ties to like Batman lore. So it felt like it had been around since the beginnings of Batman, which was cool.
Yeah, because the thing is, I think when you have like mainstream, like the big institutions like Spider-Man, Batman, it's always a bit touchy when you start playing around with like their mythos and all that, because there's a lot of diehard fans, and then when you kind of start getting into like altering like, the lore and all that, people can get a bit offended by that. But I did find that the Court of Owls did kind of change the status quo, and I think that's what I appreciate about it, because up until the point I felt Batman was getting a bit stagnant, so Court of Owls kind of shook things up.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool, yeah.
Let's kind of get into some articles. Let's talk some movies, some TV stuff. Let's kick it off with, of course, some Disney Plus. So this is, a lot of people have been talking about the DC Plus stuff. We have over at Tech Radar, Loki 2 is reportedly 2023's final Marvel TV series, as multiple Disney Plus series get delayed. So this past week, we also saw, actually today, as we're recording this, dropped I Am Groot Season 2. Loki Season 2 is reportedly, of course, coming out October 6th. But everything else is kind of bumped to 2024. Originally, Echo was set for late November, and the What If series as well was kind of late. But right now, from what we have What If Season 2 and X-Men 97 looking like they are going to be in somewhere in the 2024. Of course, Echo will be pushed back. Agatha, of course, was originally titled as Coven of Chaos, is now being retitled as Darkhold Diaries. Ironheart, completely out there. No date, no nothing. Who knows?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, of course. I really want to. I still want to see it. Armor Wars has yet to begin filming, and then last but not least, but Daredevil Born Again has been completely postponed because that's with both the writers and the actors strikes. So, with this shakeup, how does this push back everything that kind of we've been thinking about over the past 2 years? What Kevin Feige said, whether it's D23 or San Diego Comic-Con. Now we're really getting we're gonna have a long stint of like nothing, like, right? Because it's like, so we just had Secret Invasion, we're gonna get Loki season 2, but realistically now, like, what is the next possible thing that's gonna be coming out for, Disney Plus is gonna be having such a huge gap in everything now, right? It's not just gonna be the Marvel universe, it's also gonna be like in Star Wars as well. But for these Marvel things, we've been, I mean, shit, I feel like X-Men 97 and even like the What If, we heard about these so long ago, and it's just like they had such a high and everybody was like, oh my God, they're bringing back the animated X-Men team. And now it's like, I feel like that was like 2022.
Yeah.
Hyper, thoughts on the delays? Anything that you were super looking forward that's now kind of being like way out into the multiverse?
Listen, if I'm being completely honest and transparent, when it comes to like the latest, shows in the MCU, I'm taking, like, I do have a Disney Plus subscription, but I take it more of like I'll see it when I get it. I haven't really been X-Men 97 might be the exception, and again, that's just more from a nostalgic kick. But in terms of just stuff coming down the pipeline, I'm just like, let's get it when we get it. And I'm kind of hoping the whole, saying separation makes the heart grows fonder plays into this, because I just found that for a while it just seemed like we had like one show after another and we didn't get enough time for those shows to breathe and kind of resonate with the audience. And I kind of find I know that Disney now, with the whole Plus subscription, they want to kind of pump out the content to make people feel like they're getting their $9.99 or whatever you're paying for, worth it. But I do feel that this actually might be a good thing down the line, because it might reinvigorate people's interest in Disney. And maybe there was a bit of burnout the last year or so just for the glut of content that was coming out.
Okay. Zach?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, I'm devastated by Daredevil. I mean, that's the thing I've been looking forward to the most. So I'm devastated by having to wait any further and longer for Daredevil Born Again. Other than that, I think it's really bad news. I think I really feel like Marvel is struggling. I think it's stagnating a little bit. I think a lot of people aren't super happy with everything post Thanos. And then the idea of like, hey, here's all these different characters, and that's really kind of been the only thing that's like floating Marvel, in my opinion, in terms of like the populace's opinion is like, check out this coming. So people are excited to see these new things. And then now that they're being pushed back even further, it like you said, Justin, it kind of like, we heard this so long ago, like I can't stay excited for 2 years, like for stuff like that. And especially, agree with me or disagree with me, but like, I'll say it because I kind of made fun of her, but for like a C list or D list character like Ironheart, and you want me to be excited for like 3 years for that? And I'll even go as far to say like Armor Wars, man. Like, I mean, War Machine, Rhodey. I mean, yeah, cool, I guess, but like, I'm not just like, yes, show me more Rhodey. I don't know. I think it's going to hurt them, but I think the other thing, it might help them because Disney's struggling with profit, and they're not doing as well as they have in the past, and they're even looking at like limiting how many shows they put out and all that stuff, which I think is probably a good idea. Sometimes, quality over quantity is a little bit more important, even though we want to see all these characters. So I don't know, man. Time will tell to see kind of how that all plays out, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like it's just going to be, and we had like you spoke on Ironheart, like we saw her in, Black Panther, and, the hype was there for a little bit, but it's just like when the show comes out, like, is anybody going to remember her? Do
you remember her now? Like,
I get it. But even so, like, look at it like Agatha. Like,
yeah,
if you watched WandaVision, which was the first Disney Plus show, and like we haven't, and that's what it is. Like, she's the type of character where we haven't seen her since. Like,
right.
Everybody else, at least. All right, so it's like Black Panther, and then we're going right into Ironheart show, Armor Wars. We've seen Rhodey all over these years. It's a little different with some of these characters, but like some of the newer characters, I mean, Echo is another one, someone who was in a more recent Disney Plus show to have her own series. It's like,
yeah, that's still been a while, right? I mean, when did Hawkeye come out? Two Christmases ago? This is going to be the second Christmas, 2 years.
Yeah, we're approaching the second Christmas, right? Yeah.
That's a long time and that's the thing, of course, obviously making shows is not like a quick, fast thing, but like these new characters, this isn't a Cap. This isn't a Thor. You know what I mean? It's not like a character that people are invested in. And if you really want to keep this alive, I don't know, man, you got to kind of move these characters out a little bit faster. These lower tier characters. I mean, shit, even Loki's getting more play quicker than anyone else, probably. Wouldn't you say? I mean, if you look at Loki, like appearances in the MCU, like that dude's probably more prolific than anyone in terms of like time span.
Yeah. And then at least we're going to get Kang. So it kind of keeps like what they're doing with this whole Kang phase, basically, in reality, whatever. So,
yeah.
I guess we'll have to see with what the shakeup is going to be for Disney Plus. But speaking of Disney Plus and sticking with it, we finally hit the halfway point of Ahsoka. So we are definitely going to drop in some spoilers for the first 4 episodes. Of course, I'm thoroughly enjoying the Tuesday nights because I get to watch it on Tuesday night. So obviously we talked about the first 2 episodes. We kind of skipped the 3rd episode because we always like to do a mid-season review. So 4 episodes in. And just before we talk about this mid-season, if you live in a big major city, they're doing episode 5 in some theaters. I of course checked my local areas and there's nothing going near me.
Nothing near you?
Yeah, not yet. I mean, I don't know. Maybe over the weekend they'll announce something in New York, which would be pretty awesome to go and check out. But I don't
What's
know.
The runtime on it?
Like 45.
Oh, so it's just like it's like like a normal episode. It's not like a longer run time.
No, I haven't read anything else other than that. But we'll see how that goes. But let's kind of get into it. Let's start off with Hyper because I know he's not 100% caught up, but because I'm sure we'll go deep dive in both Zach and me. So, Hyper, what are you thinking about the series? I don't know if you're a huge Star Wars guy, but thoughts on Ahsoka?
Yeah, listen, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan in the room. I kind of take the approach like where I've seen the original movies and I've seen like the spin-offs and all that, and I kind of take them, I guess, more for the entertainment purposes. I don't really get too invested in the back lore and all that in terms of how accurate these characters are portrayed. For me, it's just like, look, if it's entertaining, then it's entertaining, and that's kind of how I'm taking the Ahsoka series. You're right, Justin. I literally just started watching the series like this week, so I do have some catching up. But from what I'm seeing, I do like where it's going. I do like the interaction between Sabine and Ahsoka, and for now, listen, it's catching my attention just like Mandalorian did. And again, I'm coming like I'm reiterating, I'm coming from the non-Star Wars guy perspective, so it says a lot when it's still grabbing my attention, whereas the Marvel offerings lately have not. So, by and large, I have been entertained so far.
As a non Star Wars person, because Zach and I are gonna super deep dive in this stuff, and of course myself, is it digestible? Coming from someone that doesn't know anything, is it how does it feel?
Do you feel like what's going on since you haven't watched Rebels? That's probably the most important question for someone.
So I kind of take this approach where it's like I can tell that there are certain things that I kind of need, like I'm not catching certain Easter eggs and references, but I feel face value I can still get something out of it in terms of keeping me engaged. It's almost like reading certain comics, especially like the Grant Morrison DC run, where you read a Grant Morrison run, you can enjoy the story, but you can also tell that he's dropping references that you would appreciate more if you read other backstories, in his catalog. So, again, I feel engaged, and and I don't have the same back knowledge of Star Wars, so it goes to show that the show still stands on its own.
That's good. It's good to hear.
Yeah.
Zach.
So I'm glad you actually came with me next because I haven't watched the episode from yesterday, so I don't know. So and you feel free to spoil because I just didn't get around to watching it today. But I mean, like I said, that the first 2 episodes I really enjoyed it. And maybe in like this, everything I'm going to say might be get solved in this next episode that I haven't seen. But I think if I have a complaint about it is I don't find, and I hate to say this because I honestly I've been fighting any negatives because I know how much you love Ahsoka and you love the show, and I do really enjoy the show, and I think it's great, and I think Filoni, it's so much. It's like fan dressing for people. Like, I mean, like you watched all of it. It's just like, hell yeah, it's hitting all the spots. But I'm feeling a little lack of connection with Ahsoka. I don't find her character to be very interesting right now. I feel like I was really excited when they cast Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka, and I loved the Mandalorian appearances of her. But in the first 3 episodes so far, she's a little wooden to me. It's just very much like, yes, Sabine, you will figure this out, you know. And I'm like, and that doesn't feel like Ahsoka to me because I'm like, you're not a Jedi. Stop acting like a Jedi. Stop. Like, she feels more like a Jedi in terms of like this mentor role, and I don't really care for it, to be honest. And that's always kind of been one of my hangups with the show, which you and I talked about, was I don't like the whole master apprentice aspect between the two of them. Like, Ahsoka's a Jedi who's not a Jedi. And so like, why are we trying to teach Jedi things, especially in the Mandalorian, when you're like, oh, yo, Grogu, gross, get him away from me. Like, I can't train that little shit, you know? And then now she's like, hey, Sabine, what's up? Here's a lightsaber. I don't know. There's something about the Ahsoka character that hasn't hit home for me yet. Other than that, the visuals are amazing. I'm loving the villains. I think the villains are fabulous. I'm holding out hope for Freddie Prinze Jr. I want some Ezra Bridger. I want some Thrawn. I'm hoping they show up, and maybe they have shown up already. I don't know in this episode, but I really don't hope I hope they don't show up like episode 7 or 8, like final scene in 7, and then 8 you get them. You know, like that's gonna piss me off. But it's good. I'm enjoying it. I am.
I think that's where they're gonna go.
I think it is where they're going to go.
I mean, yeah, because I feel like Filoni's
so they don't show up in 4. Oh,
yeah, they don't. Alert. But I feel like because I just feel like Filoni's movie is going to be like Heir to the Empire, like
right, more focused on it.
Yeah. So is that your review? Is that your mid-season?
Yeah,
good.
I think that's where I'm at right now.
All right. So we broke down the first 2 episodes, and I said I thoroughly enjoyed it. I said I had no qualms. Episode 3, again, it's still great. I think there's a lot of lore, a lot of background. The episode 3, it's you get a little bit of everything. 3 kind of had that space battle, and that's something that's kind of brought back into cool. The world of Star Wars. Yeah. Something that we haven't seen in such a long time because of both where the Mandalorian show is and the Book of Boba Fett show is the New Republic, right? Because like the original trilogy was all about like the Republic and the Empire. The prequels was Jedi, Sith, Separatists, the Republic. So like it's cool to see, and especially you see it a little bit more in episode 4 as well with like Hera and like where her role is. And I get what you're saying about how like you really feel like this is an Ahsoka show. Like they're leaning towards everybody. They're leaning towards 3 females, Ahsoka, Sabine, and Hera. And that's the tough thing to do, right? It's like, how much play do you give each of these characters? I understand that the name of the show is called Ahsoka, but I don't see them doing like an episode where like they completely get away from her, like in what was it, Book of Boba Fett, and then they made it like a Mando episode.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to do that. It's still going to always keep the Ahsoka. This 4th episode is just wild. Like it's another great episode. I had no qualms. It's literally. It's just such an amazing movie. It's almost like watching a movie. Like the lightsaber battle in episode 4 is back to where it should be. And like Filoni knows that George Lucas created these off of like like samurai westerns. And that's literally what it is. Like the samurai battles in this are so much better than watching anything from the sequel trilogy. Like, and it's not, even look at like the prequel trilogy or the original trilogy. Like you could be, it's not a, fascist thing. Well, it's like men or women. Like I'm not bashing Rey
because she's a female, because like I've seen what Ahsoka can do. Why? Because she trained like 2 hours a day for 5 days a week while shooting. Like, so this is like no joke. So like when you watch that, and you'll see it once you watch episode 4. Like when you watch this fight, and you've seen in the trailers when she fights Balin, it's old school samurai movies, and I love that. Like it's a dance, and that's what it's all about. For the way Star Wars is, like it's not just like like one-handed. It's everything is a flow, everything is emotion. Sabine, I was super excited to see her live action. I was super excited to see her live action. I don't think either of them have really disappointed me yet, and I think we'll get to them at some point, like whether they have their own show, or we'll see where it's going. But I think everybody is playing their part so far for the first 4 episodes. And, I really do think that you need to watch Rebels to understand the ending of episode 4. So, because if you didn't, you're just going to be like, oh, I don't understand anything. Like the casual viewer, I'm like waiting for like my mom to catch up and be like, where is Ahsoka?
I'll come back to you after I watch episode 4.
Yeah,
that's too bad, because I mean that's kind of been like I feel like Filoni and them. I mean, you kind of have to push that narrative, right? That like you don't worry about watching Rebels, and that's kind of been the big thing they've been pushing. So for you to say that on episode 4, that's
Well, I mean, he did kind of say like this is season 5 of Rebels, right?
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't know what the Purgles were unless you watched Rebels. Like Hugh, you really wouldn't know him unless you watched Clone Wars. I guess little things that they mention. And everybody complains about every little thing that like is said or done in these series so far. And it's just like they're trying to do so much and keep it to a, I guess like a canon. And I think they're doing a fine job with this one. I think this was so much better done than Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian season 1 at the time, because it felt like those shows, especially Mandalorian, like we've talked about it, Mandalorian always felt like a video game. Like every episode was a level, and he had to get to point A to go to point B, and to like finish this is literally that's the episode.
Yes,
this is at least like a controlled storyline. So I'm excited. I have still no qualms realistically. Like I just don't know. Like I really don't know if I don't not like anything like watching the show.
Because I just want more Ahsoka. I want more. And like I'm with you. Like I like Hera and I like Sabine, and they're fun to have around. But it's kind of like, I don't know, man. Like, can we get some solo Ahsoka? Like, I don't need Sabine. I guess I didn't expect Sabine and Hera to be so in the show, to be honest with you. I kind of expected them to be more like secondary characters who you maybe would go an episode or 2 without seeing one of them possibly. And I'm not saying I want that either, but like, I honestly feel like Ahsoka's not getting enough time in the first 3 episodes, to be honest with you. She doesn't have enough breakout or like role. Sabine has way more in those first 3 episodes. I feel like she's moving the story more than Ahsoka is. So I don't know. I'm hoping it evens out. We're early yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There's a scene in episode 4 that there's a character that I feel like should have showed up that didn't show up. I'm not going to spoil it, but since you haven't seen it, I thought you would have caught up by now. But
I'm going to watch it right after this.
Good. And then we'll talk about it. But let's get out of the Ahsoka review for mid-season. Let's get into our final article before we get into what are we currently reading. Sticking with some TV movie news, switching it over to the DC side. So announced at San Diego Comic-Con this year, the animated version of Crisis on Infinite Earth is expected to premiere in 2024 and will have no ties to James Gunn's current universe and his DC reboot. So the one thing that DC has literally gotten right over the past 13 years, I'd say, is their animated stuff. Their movies have been amazing. It's been in one universe, and then they had a flashpoint basically to reboot everything, and they've kind of continued a new universe. But with that being said, DC's animated Crisis on Infinite Earth is reportedly being split into 3 parts, according to CBR.com. So according to the resume of animation director Mike Milo, the Crisis of an Infinite Earths movie will be released in 3 separate parts. It's not 100% confirmed, but according to this Reddit user who said it, and I think that this is the way to go. Like they've done movies where story arcs have been more than like 3 or 4 episodes or issues, right? We've seen Batman Hush. Batman Hush was like a 11 issue run, and it was one movie, and it was like an hour and 15 minutes maybe. you can't cram all that into one animated movie. So the fact that they're taking the 12 issues of Crisis on Infinite Earth, which a lot happens, a lot at stuff that is just, resonated over the years with, the DC universe, things that have happened that have been amazing. Fact that they're making it into 3 individual movies, which I hope that this is true, I think is perfect. Warner Brothers Discovery is yet to confirm that the information is accurate, but I mean, it is a big deal. Something that, came out in the 80s, Marv Wolfman, George Perez, unbelievable art, unbelievable storyline. I mean, if you've read it, you know what happens to like Barry Allen, like Supergirl. There's like so much that happens. Obviously, we got like a trimmed down version of the live action on like the Arrowverse, but 3 movies, I think, is the way to do this. Zach, thoughts on the DC animated stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched all of them, but I used to watch a lot of them like pretty regularly. And you're right. I mean, they've never messed up a DC. I mean, even the ones that don't hit are still good. You know what I mean? Like, and I love them. And you know what I really like about the DC animated is my wife is like a big DC fan, and she loves animated stuff. So it's like a home run. Like when that shit comes out, like, hey, you want to watch this? She's like, yeah, sure. Let me finish watching Justice League seasons 2, 3, and 4 again for like the 5th time. So. Yeah, I like it. I'm for it, man.
Awesome. Hyper? Thoughts?
Yeah, listen, you hit the nail on the head. In terms of DC's track record, in terms of animated movies, like to this day, one of my favorites is Under the Red Hood and Justice League Doom. Those I could rewatch those again and again. And even going back as far as Mask of the Phantasm, I would still say that's probably one of the better animated movies to come out, comic book wise. And I think you're right. It is the way to go in terms of splitting it into segmented movies. It's almost like the Infinity Saga, because like if they were to have crammed, both movies into one, I just feel like there's a lot of key moments that happen in that, between the death of Tony Stark and the death of Gamora kind of spaced out. It let fans kind of marinate on some of those key moments. So if you were to kind of cram all that in one movie, it's just a lot going on, and it might not give those moments room to breathe. The only thing I kind of hope for is that the release dates between the 3 movies aren't too far apart, because you do run the risk of people like, interest waning if it's too, like, when Infinity War and Infinity, when Endgame came out, they were literally about a year apart. So I would hope that it's somewhere around that range and it's not like a Last Ronin situation where you're getting like, these movies so far, separated that people start like, losing interest in them.
Yeah, I feel like if all 4 of them, I think, come out within I'd say 4 to 5 months, but obviously who knows. And I feel like the animated stuff is a little different than what's going on with like the actors strike. And then they announced it this year. Hopefully if it definitely all comes out next year in 2024, I think that's fine, because typically we only get about 2 DC movies a year for the most part. Usually the main ones. So I'm happy to have that just like all of 2024. Because what was the last one that I just watched was, what was the last one that came out?
Wasn't it the Wonder Woman one? Or was it War of the Gods?
No, it was they came out with the Batman, the Doom, which was an Elseworld story. And then just after, they had the Superman, Supergirl Legion of Superheroes, which was an interesting one. Like kind of putting Supergirl into the future with like Brainiac, a different version of Brainiac. So yeah, there's a lot that's out there, and I like them all. Yeah, and dude, me and my brother will watch Under the Red Hood all the time on Max. Good. Like it's such a great movie. So let's finish it up with what are we currently reading before we get out of here. So Hyper, tell us anything that you're currently reading, whether it's old, new, whatever, something maybe people should take a look at.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, I've severely trimmed down my new comic book day pulls. I kind of stuck to like a few franchise titles. Like I mentioned earlier on, I'm reading like the IDW, TMNT, like the mainline stuff, and some of the spin-off series. At the same time, I'm also kind of delving into the back issue side of things, and I'm actually rereading Ultimate Comic Spider-Man, like, the first solo Miles Morales. That still holds up to this day. And also on the DC side, I'm actually reading Sinestro War. So that's also actually
that's really good. Yeah. All the Jeff Johns stuff is really good.
Yeah. So and the thing is, coming from a guy that doesn't really know the DC verse as well. I kind of find it's a very accessible read. You could literally read that storyline like volume. It was like two trade paperbacks, which I have, volume 1 and volume 2. And I obviously there is some stuff that I feel like I'd appreciate more if I read the back catalog, but I'm still enjoying it for what it is.
Yeah, I think the way like Sinestro War and those were done, it was perfect. I mean, you had the whole War of the Green Lanterns, and you had the Sinestro Corps War was perfect because it wasn't super deep into that Jeff Johns run.
Mm-hmm.
Like it started in, and then it crossed over between a lot of other titles. But yeah, that's one of my favorite runs. That whole Jeff Johns thing is amazing for Green Lantern. Like what he did for Green Lantern, what he did for Flash as well is just unbelievable. And it's funny. So speaking real quick about the TMNT, like after I was on your show on Sunday, I literally was sitting on the couch watching TV on, I think, was it Monday, Zach?
Is this where this came from?
Yes.
Is it okay? Okay.
Was it
made
Monday?
sense because it was out of nowhere. I was like, wow, he's talking about this again. Okay.
So like I was literally laying on the couch and I'm like I was on eBay and then I was on Amazon and I was looking at like the hardcovers for TMNT and like
I remember
some people got some good, they had some decent prices, but then I went on Amazon and I literally looked up every hardcover and I could actually order them and they were all on sale. Like some of them were pretty much like almost half off and I was like really considering buying them, but I was just like, I'm going to Baltimore Comic-Con this week. I was like, I don't know if I really want to spend like the money to do all 15 volumes right now. I was like, maybe I'll pick up some of them after the con and we'll see how that goes. But I told Zach about it too. And he was just like, yeah, he's like, oh, I really want to get into it. But he's like, I've already read them. So
yeah, I'm not going to, I just love, they just look so great. The collected editions are just so nice. I think I'd be more interested in getting into them if they combined a few. Now it's like, what, 16 now? I think they're up to
yeah.
Yo, man, make an omnibus here. Okay, like I'd probably buy an omnibus at this point for sure. But
yeah, I think they could do that at some point. I'm sure they'll, because like the first 4 I think are all the turtles on it. So it's like do that as like as an omnibus, and then just keep going with like the villains, and then April Jenica's in there, and then I don't even know who some of these other characters are because again, this old reboot for IDWs. From what both of you guys have said, what I've heard from Zach over the past couple of years has been amazing, and I really should start it being an old school Turtles fan. So, Zach, what do you got on? What are we currently reading?
So, man, there was a pretty good week. And then I picked up, I got a suggestion that I saw from someone online, and I picked up, I'm trying to think, that's what my pick of the week is, but I wanted to talk about, the rest of the books are pretty average. But the books I really liked is I picked up The Hunger in the Dusk. It's an IDW title, and I'm trying to think how to explain it. It's almost like basically the world, there's humans and orcs, and you don't have a lot of backstory yet, but humans don't like orcs don't like humans, and they fight each other for land, and it seems like the world has like a limited amount of like farmable land at this point. They've been fighting for years, generations, I'm not really sure yet, but in comes some new creature that is threatening both races, and so they have to team up. So it's kind of interesting. They have like it sounds like they kind of have like war parties that are out there, and the leader of like the largest orc clan is doing marriages to like he's marrying someone in another orc clan to kind of form up there, and then he's also like giving his cousin to this war party as like a team up as well. And so basically humans and orcs are trying to work together to fight against this common enemy. But there's magic, there's sword and sorcery type stuff, and it's really fun. There's 2 issues out now. I picked up both of them, and I'm really enjoying it. The artwork's pretty cool. It's a fun story. The Hunger in the Dusk is what it's called. So if you're into that kind of like fantasy sword and sorcery thing, I think you guys would really enjoy this one.
Nice. For myself, obviously Dark Droids 2 came out this week, another continuation for the Dark Droids for the Star Wars stuff. I'm enjoying this, something different from the Star Wars universe, right? That they've kind of taken it back. The bounty hunters are kind of on the sidelines, the Jedi, the Sith, it is what it is. You get this whole like plague of robots taking over and again, I talk about it every week. It's a little horror on the side of the droids. So it's pretty creepy to have this, plague of the droids becoming, kind of self-sufficient in a way, like almost like Skynet in a way.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying that series pretty much. Obviously, there's the other crossover that came out this week, which was Star Wars 38 with Lobot and Lando. It's a whatever tie-in, I guess. It really doesn't push the narrative too far. The only thing really interesting is Boba Fett shows up. So not too much of that on that one. Another honorable mention, Batman 137, coming out of the Batman Catwoman Gotham War, really starts it up.
Yeah.
And I
full
just
speed
love
too, right? Like it starts at full speed.
Yeah, Batman just goes, he goes hard on these, bad guys. He goes right towards Catwoman's generals, and then immediately it's just like the Bat family fighting each other. And I think it's absolutely wild. Like you don't really get to see too much on that. And the fact that like it's always fun to like hear Bruce talk, like when he's fighting them, he's just like, I train them. I know all their moves. I know this, I know that. I know Stephanie doesn't have this, or I know how this person fights. He's like, oh, I know Dick's going to be the hardest. And it's just like, it's so to think about like the lore of all the Bat characters of how it is. And, again, how, I talked about it last week with the prologue and how some of the characters are not about this, this new crime wave or how to stop crime. And how Batman's basically like, listen, if you get in my way, if you like let somebody go, he's like, I'm going to turn you in, basically. And I think it's, I mean, Chip's doing a great job. Like it's so far, it's better to me. It's way better than Failsafe. I mean, Failsafe was, pretty good.
It didn't really feel like it hit, huh?
No, it definitely didn't hit as hard as this one after just that one shot in this issue. So
I will say
I'm loving it.
The best part about it, in my opinion, of like this story, and actually just kind of as we disparaged Failsafe, but it like presented us is you can tell he's on the edge, man. Like he is like he's been put through the ringer with all the Zur-En-Arrh and the Failsafe stuff, and like he doesn't seem like Batman in a way, right? He's like desperate. He's kind of at it, and he's going hard against them, and there's definitely, you can feel the tension there with him. Like he's like as I was reading it, I had like a mental image of like a rope and all the wires are frayed and there's like just one hanging on, and that's Batman right now, like in this story. And you can see even with the Bat family, they're not like against him, but they're like, hey man, just chill. Like it's like, it also is kind of like that conversation when you're out with your friends and like one dude's like drunk as shit and he's partying and you're like, hey dude, like you need to just calm down. And I feel like that's what the Bat family's talking to Batman. And the surprise addition at the end of the issue, I think is going to be, I'm excited to see where he takes that, because that kind of came out of nowhere. Who showed up in the Pat cave at the end.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yes. Very interesting to see how that's going to play out.
Right.
And then even like all the villains, like
yes,
as well, like the round table of round table of villains as well. Very interesting. So that's kind of my honorable mention. And then last but not least, a new book that I just kind of picked up on a whim, didn't really know anything, but I thought the cover was pretty cool. It's called Tear Us Apart from Dark Horse. A new #1 that just came out this week. Its synopsis is: deep in the Canadian wilderness, a vicious cult dedicated to the ideology of pain trains children to become deadly assassins. In the midst of this world of cruelty, two teenagers break the cardinal rule by falling in love. The only thing standing between them and happily ever after is an army of murderers with a taste for blood. So pretty interesting stuff. Like I just said, like I said, it's basically got it's kind of like a Hogwarts / Deadly Class in a way. Like again, there's all these kids and they're being trained by this one guy who's got like he's kind of got like superpowers, but I don't know. I think it's just the way he fights. I mean, he literally does like this one move to this kid who's like disrespectful and like literally blows him apart by doing like almost like a karate move to the guy's chest. It's pretty wild. But I mean, if you've read like Saga, like the whole storyline between Saga, like how Marco and I forget the other chick's name, how like they're from two different worlds, they're in a war and they're in prison. Same thing. Like there's a guy and a girl, or a boy and a girl, and they're in this cult. And again, they kind of fall in love and they need to like get out. But how are they going to get out now? They're going to have to fight all these other kids that are now going against them. So the art's pretty awesome as well. It's kind of almost like a black and white, gray tones. So I don't know the writer, someone that I don't even know about. So I definitely recommend just checking that out. Not much again, other than really the synopsis from that, but it looks like it's going to be pretty crazy because obviously they're going to have to go out into the wilderness and survive among all these other kids. So Tear Us Apart #1 from Dark Horse, something a little different.
Cool.
Nice.
So that's it for us for season 3, episode 36. Again, if you're listening to this early enough and you're down in Baltimore, feel free to hit me up. I will be there all 3 days. There's tons of stuff going on this weekend. It's absolutely wild how many different like little small shows here in this area and things that I wanted to get to, but of course I won't be around. Mr. Hyper Combo Comics, thank you so much for popping on here. Let people know where they can find you and any closing words for yourself.
Yeah, well, first off, listen, like I said, appreciate you guys having me on.
Sure.
Been a big fan of the show. Always listen to it on the drive on Fridays. So it's nice to actually be on as a guest, and hopefully I lived up to whatever expectations you guys had. But in terms of what I have going on, my main platform is IG, hyper.combo.comics. That's my handle. I do appear with the Comic Kingpins whenever work permits on YouTube, but lately I've been kind of branching out into my own YouTube channel. Like Justin mentioned earlier on the show, I've only done my 3rd live show since Justin was actually a part of it. I did a whole What's in the Box episode where I kind of showed what I picked up during a recent 3.5-hour trek to basically pick up a comic plot. So that was done this past Sunday. So appreciate Justin for being on, and Manimal, at some point I'm going to have you on as a guest. I'm still there's a couple of ideas floating around on my head in terms of content I want to put on my YouTube. Still need to flesh it out, but yeah, that's kind of what I have going on. YouTube and IG mainly.
When you're ready to talk X-Men, you let me know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's hell yeah. We should just talk X-Men the whole time.
We gotta get a video game streaming going on. We did that a few times here on the podcast. On our YouTube channel. There's a couple of videos up where I stream playing Fortnite, but I gotta get back into it maybe with some fighting stuff. So maybe we'll have to do that on yours. So
it's funny because I do upload like mini clips of Street Fighter. You know, obviously it's the matches that I won. I don't really put the ones that I lost. So I actually was at some point thinking, okay, maybe this needs some voiceover commentary or something, because right now you just have static clips. But yeah, a video game streaming might be something in the works as well.
You're gonna pick up Mortal Kombat 1?
I don't know if I'm gonna pick it up day one. I say that, but I might cave in, and I probably will, because Street Fighter is usually my franchise, but I'm a fighting game guy in general, so I might end up picking that up. But there's so many good stuff coming out. Like I know Spider-Man's coming out on PS5 and all that, so I kind of have to. And games aren't cheap anymore. Like what is it, like 90? Like here in Canada, it's like $90 or $80, I think, for a brand new release. Yeah, it's no
65
joke.
here.
Yeah, about 60 to 70. It's crazy. Zach, any last words?
Nope, I'm all good.
Awesome. Well, again, I think we talked about it last week. We are going to be putting out a variant T-shirt, finalizing details on that. So make sure to be giving us a follow. There'll be limited copies for all the different sizes. So I'm super excited when it drops, because it looks pretty badass. That's it. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll catch you all next week. And again, if you're in Baltimore, come by and say hi.